When SPD was written, Power Rangers had to include aliens because obviously that's what Deca Ranger was. You had aliens and it was cops and robbers type thing, and all that sort of stuff that we've known through Deca Ranger and obviously SPD. We had tech that had not been really thought of, flying cars, you name it. There was tech involved so much, and obviously it was in the distant future, and it was set in 2025. Now we're in 2022, only a few years until SPD is meant to happen in the Power Ranger universe, and we're kind of way behind. In I think one of the episodes, I think it's Wormhole or the other Power Ranger SPD Dino Thunder crossover, we found out that basically some of the systems in SPD uses Ethan's technology, and you kind of think, how? Because nothing's really being mentioned. We have some sort of tech in Dino Fury that they say, we've seen Operation Overdrive, Heartfields or whatever it is, like technologies which is from Operation Overdrive. When would Ethan make this technology that SPD right now would be able to use? It's at the moment we are coming across some sort of like timeline, like kind of barrier, and it makes me think, would we actually get the proper SPD timeline, or is it going to be something else? And time is effectively running out. The only way that I can think what would happen is that we get a time jump. So with Cosmic Fury, they are out there for a good maybe couple of years, and if they come back to Earth, or if it carries on, then we get to see that Ethan has made this technology. He has done this within a year, and SPD is using it. But the way from I remember that episode is that basically Ethan made it straight away after maybe a year or two after Dino Thunder, and therefore it's in the SPD technology. Now, just kind of thinking about it, I don't know if he is there, if his company is global at the time of Dino Thunder or a few years after, so you'll have to let me know in the comments down below. Let's say right now we don't know on that one, or it hasn't come to fruition. How would Cosmic Fury deal with it? And this is how I would deal with it. I would probably say that we follow the Rangers over the course of maybe 2 years. It's going to be hard because obviously we know it's 10 episodes long, and it's right after what happened in Dino Fury. But let's say Cosmic Fury gets another season and they make this and they carry it on, that you could do a complete time skip for when they come back to Earth. They come back in 2026. For whatever reason, I feel like that would be the best way. Thus, therefore, you've let SPD do their thing. You've moved on to the next stage, and that would make perfect sense to do it something like that, rather than they come back to Earth and it's like, oh, SPD is meant to be happening in 2 years' time, everyone. Woo! Now, there are a few options that I would probably do in this one. One is that Cosmic Fury returns to Earth, and that's it. We finish Power Rangers on the 30th year, and thus therefore we move into the reboot, and thus therefore that entire timeline still carries on in its own way, but we don't get to see it. Number 2, Cosmic Fury returns to Earth, and more aliens have landed on Earth and are now living it because Earth has welcomed every single alien out there, as long as they're not destroying stuff, but opens its arms and says, hey, you're all allowed, and we see what happens. We know that Piggy went back in time to kind of maybe start this off, but we know that Rafconians have kind of moved in on Earth at the very end of Dino Fury Season 2, so therefore it happens, and we know that there are other alien life forms out there in the Lion Galaxy, Aquitar, etc., Eternoid and stuff like that. So obviously aliens can come to Earth, and thus therefore it starts there and then, and technology gets bigger and bigger, and thus therefore Ethan's technology company kind of starts in right there, and boom, right there we have SPD starting in 2025. But I think that if you're going to introduce the next whatever it is after Cosmic Fury, if it's their own thing, if it's something different, I would then say set this in 2026, because therefore it would make more sense after you've had literally 2025 happen with SPD, and thus therefore you can carry on like nothing has actually happened. The thing is, the reason why I talk about all this is I don't want it to get to a point in time where it offsets everything. So at the moment, SPD is in the same timeline as every other Ranger show, but let's say by 2025 we are literally stuck at what we have. There is no flying cars, there is no future. It then pushes SPD into its own little time frame, and thus therefore setting Dino Thunder in the same thing, and thus setting Mighty Morphin in the same thing, as well as all the other seasons, and it literally just pushes them into another alternative timeline, alternative universe, whichever way you look at it. And we know that they're all kind of linked together. Dino Thunder went through every single Ranger series. You got Ninja Storm. You've got loads of other things like that. And it just pushes them into another timeline where SPD never happened. Thus, therefore, Wormhole and all that didn't happen. It's such a huge mess as I hit my boom pole, but it's a huge mess that goes around, and that's not something that I want to see, and it makes it a lot harder to kind of get out of there, not unless you do a time travel thing and kind of push everything again. It becomes messy, and that's what I don't want to happen to Power Rangers. The main thing is, and I've done a video, hopefully you've either watched it before this one or you've just jumped into this one. But the main point is Saban didn't want it to link to other ones. It pretty much, he wanted it to be self-contained. But it doesn't work like that, because we've had stuff since Saban took back over, back with Samurai, where other Rangers have interacted. Hell, we had the whole thing where RPM comes across. That was a big thing. Then obviously we had Super Mega Force. We've had other things happen all the time. And now going into Beast Morphers, we had Dino Charge interact with literally with the rest of it, as well as the Mighty Morphing Rangers. I'm getting words out. I'm trying to remember it all right now. But you see all of this stuff sort of happen. So if Saban at the time didn't want all of this happening, he would have said, no, we're not doing this. But it just makes this a whole big mess. Very similar to how Super Mega Force dealt with how many versions of Tommy there are. No one would have thought about Gokaiger coming along, but it's that sort of thing of how do you explain it, where Tommy has been pretty much almost every Ranger under the sun. How does this work? How do you kind of connect them to actually make them work perfectly and fit in with your narrative when you're storytelling? We had many questions when it came to Power Rangers. The probably biggest one was RPM, was Vengex still around? And yet we got that payoff in Beast Morphers when Evox became Vengex and stuff like that. So literally linking little things like that, you could fix all of this much later on. But right now, why would you want to do it where you can explain everything in the series? But I just feel like there's so much that they could easily do to kind of fix all of this, to kind of sort it all out. But right now, it's just getting to a point where you shouldn't have to later on in the series, where you could have everything popping up now. Very similar to how we now got Rathconians settling on Earth, which could send a message out to other aliens that they could settle on Earth. They could do something like that. It makes more sense to go with the story of what you've got previously rather than ignoring it. But yeah, again, I know Saban liked to ignore a lot of things. I think the most easiest way of fixing all of this is having a time jump. Literally have the Cosmic Fury Rangers out in space for another good couple of years, or have them come back in 2026, which then means that you've got SPD. You've had this massive tech overhaul that everybody is using and new stuff is being built. It makes more sense to do it that way too, rather than just leave it or ignore it. And I know Saban would have ignored it and then be like, why is everyone hating on this? Saban, you didn't fix some of this. You just kind of ignored it and hoped it would go away, or the fans would ignore it, which clearly they haven't. So there's tons of stuff that's going on about it that you could fix with a simple time jump and then have the Rangers come back much later on, and thus therefore have futuristic stuff. You know, pretty much sure you could dress everything up to make it look like that, which again would probably cost a lot, or just have it normally. I don't know, there's just so much you could do with it to kind of bring it in rather than just ignore it. I really like what Simon's done so far, and I'm hoping that he's going to look at this and go, okay, we're going to fix it. If not, stop it at the 30th, and thus therefore you're good to go effectively. I am hoping that SPD gets put in its right place, where at the right time to have sort of stuff and have SPD people walking about and stuff like that. It would make more sense to do something like that rather than to ignore it. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. What are your thoughts on the whole SPD timeline? Do you think it's going to work together, or do you think they're just going to skip over it and make sure it never happened? Let me know down below in the comments. Yeah, and I'll see you later.
チャンネルをサポートしてくれてありがとうございます。チャンネル登録、高評価お願いします。以下のリンクから商品を入手することができます。